Hey guys, so this is my mouse that I've been using for the past little bit for Star Wars Battlefront and all first-person shooters really. But this really stemmed from Star Wars Battlefront EE3 rapid firing. So this is just my main custom mouse. I guess we can just call this like custom mouse 1. And the base of this internally is a Logitech G400. It's important to know that the Logitech G400S is the same thing as the G400, just a exterior finish revision that's a little bit more, has a little bit more durable outside coating, but is the same thing. So when you hear me recommend the G400, I mean both the G400 and G400S. Anyway, let's discuss this mouse in particular. So I've done a lot of tuning to get this to my particular liking. We'll go ahead and start with the externals. So the first thing is compared to a normal G400, which I unfortunately don't have a normal one here, but you guys can see here, oh, I got sweaty hands a little bit. You can see there's a rubberized coating that's on the outside, whereas on my custom mouse, see how it's glossy? That's because I took a scrub brush and rubbing alcohol, and I literally just rubbed that rubberized coating off. I'm not a fan of rubberized coatings. When my hands get sweaty, I actually my hands stick a little bit better to glossy finishes, not rubberized finishes, ironically enough. Next, we have the red piece here, which is probably the most noticeable thing. So this red piece is actually from a Logitech MX510. There's the Logitech MX500, MX510, MX518. Those are all the same shell as the G400 and G400S here. So the MX510 came in a blue and red variant. I got a red variant here. And then there's also the MX500, which comes in a silver variant, and that MX518, which comes in a like hammered silver black finish that actually looks very sharp. Here I scrubbed off the black logo just so it's a shiny metallic Logitech logo. And then for my button configuration, I have middle mouse is pressing down on middle mouse is combat roll. It used to be this button over here, but I switched to this when I started using the G100S. This used to be push to talk. Now I use voice activation for voice chat. This is play pause music. This is previous track. This is next track. And then obviously shoot and scope in. The cable is actually, I just wore the heck out of, this is from a MX510, a very old mouse. The cable, I wanted to get a really well-used cable because the more well-used the cable is, the less likely it is you guys can see I'm moving my cable and it's not moving my mouse. That's desirable. You don't want a cable that's going to be too rigid. If you have a cable that's too rigid, like let's take, you take an Ikari here that has a braided cable, and if I wanna move the cable, it moves the mouse with it too. It's too rigid. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on into the internals. Oh no, let me just finish up down here. So you guys can see too, the mouse feet I have polished by using a polishing head on a Dremel. That's why you guys can see. Let me get an example. I guess I don't have any particularly good example. Oh, here you guys go. Okay, so these are both Logitech mice right here, and so they use the same feet. But you guys can see on this G600 up here, this is a foot and this is a foot. You can see they aren't as reflective as the feet on here. That's because I have these ones polished, but these ones are stock. You can see how shiny that is. You can also see compared to like the plastic on the mouse body how shiny the foot is. And they also feel noticeably smoother too. They almost feel oily. And then obviously I've carved away a lot of the weight here. I think the bottom shell, all the modding that I've done, reduced the bottom shell from 23 grams originally to, I believe, like 16 or 15 or 16. Alright, let's go ahead and open this sucker up. So if you're at all curious how to open up a G400, there's 3 screws, 2 in the top. I only keep 1 in the top because I open this thing I've opened this thing so many times where I don't want to have to peel back my mouse foot all the way to expose the second screw. And that one I like to keep in there. All right. Cool. I play at 800 DPI, 4 out of 11 windows, not 6 out of 11. And, yeah, okay. So now that I have this opened, I'll start out with the lower half of the PCB. So down here, we have my personal favorite switch, Omron D2FC-01F-T. These are a light switch, but they are very snappy. They are very poppy. Oops. Open up another video because this is plugged in. So that's my favorite switch for primary fire. For secondary fire, however, I think that these Omron switches are a little bit too light. Also, these are very quiet switches, which I absolutely love. I love quieter switches, but they're too light for my my zoom in, and I would find sometimes I'd accidentally scope in if I put that switch over here. So I have a slightly stiffer switch. This is from a Microsoft wheel mouse optical. It's just like a basic black box, which these are actually very cheap. You can get a lot of them. But I like the sound and I like the tactile feedback that they give. It's a very sharp tactile feedback, but it's not a loud snap. It's more of just it's a light kind of snip, if that makes sense. I don't know. The spring here I've tuned to, I've bent the heck out of that spring because I like a lighter spring there on my middle mouse since I use that for combat roll. I like the lighter switch. And then again, I also have that same black box switch over here for middle mouse. The scroll wheel is red, that I got from an IBM or Lenovo, like basic optical ball or basic optical mouse, and I loved it. I was like, oh yes, red, it matches the rest of my mouse, so I got it. You can see here my sensor. This is the Avago A3095 sensor. This is again a G400 PCB, not a G400S. And then moving on, I think that's everything I've done. I did have a mod for a little bit where I had a piece of tape going on the inside here to reduce the liftoff distance that ended up getting clogged with dust and messing up the sensor. And I've done all sorts of things to try to get it working again, but yeah, if you just Google search tape trick, that's a good way to reduce liftoff distance. But that's one of my current complaints about this mouse is the liftoff distance kind of sucks. It's a bit high. And then we can move into the top shell here, which we can see, again, I've cut away a lot of the internal shell, and actually I accidentally cut away, I marked it out, I marked to go around it with a Dremel, but I just decided to cut through it for some reason or whatever. I accidentally cut off the bit that the side buttons need to attach to. So I took a Lego lightsaber and some hot glue, and I put that in there. Again, the top shell, I think I reduced that by about like 4 or 5 grams. I don't quite know. The switches in the top here are actually the default zippy switches, which are alright. They need to be a little bit stiffer. I don't use the side buttons anymore for gaming, so that's no big deal to me anymore. So yeah. And I guess that just about does it. I've also polished the heads here of where the switches can make contact with the mouse shell, but I don't think that really helped a whole lot. Anyway, alright, that's it for my custom mouse that I use for Star Wars Battlefront. So this is my go-to mouse, you guys. When you ask me, well, like, what am I using? It changes day to day. Like, I have this mouse that I'm going to be using for the next little bit. I use the Ikari for about all of July and a lot of August. And then I use the G100S for a lot of September. And it's October now, and I've gone back to this. So this is my main go-to. Like, if I'm about to play a tournament match, this is what I pick up. I mean, we're going to see how that changes in the future as I try out different mice and I try to see what works and what doesn't. But for now, this has been it. This has been my #1 recommendation is a G400. That's what I recommend to everybody. And then this has been some personal flavor added to it, both performance-wise with reducing the weight from, I believe, 106 grams to now it's down to 91. And then, like things like polishing the mouse feed and tuning the buttons. And then also some personal preference stuff, like the button tuning, that's very much personal preference. That doesn't actually affect any technical stats. And then also like the color scheme. That's, again, personal preference. So, if you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'd love to tell you guys more about like what I've done, why I've done it. This is, this seems like a very straightforward video, but this has actually been months of tuning this thing to my exact liking. If anything was ever changed, I would instantly know it, and I'd want to change it back. So, yeah. Any questions, leave them down below. And with that, thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next.